Also built into the analysis menu of Fawn is the system that we call the Analysis Composer. So let's bring up the Analysis Composer. So what the Analysis Composer is a system that enables you to combine different queries and different analyses within a unique, larger analysis. So that's why we call it the Analysis Composer. The idea there is that you can really take the different bits of queries, reporting, and analysis that are available in Fawn and throw them all together into a larger analysis. What this might be used for example, would be to look at a certain phonological behavior, let's say phone substitution, in relation to maybe a measure of productivity, such as the PPC. So if we want to move on building an analysis, we just bring up the Analysis Composer as I just did, and then we can decide what we want to put in our Analysis Composer. So here the first thing I will do is add a query, the phones query, and I will have my phones query focused on a given consonant. We'll say the consonant D in onset, just to follow what we've done in other tutorials. And as you'll remember from these tutorials, every time you compose a query, you also have to worry about your query report. So this is organized in this section of the interface where you have your query here, and you can look at the report. And the report, just for this example, will limit the report just to an aggregate that's also sorted by, and let me expand my window a little bit here. This is a bit of a big interface. So, and what I'll do, my aggregate is I will make sure that the aggregate is configured to give me an IP sort. So IP target, I want to be sorting it as in the IP, using the IP sort, and I can add the same criterion for my IP actual tier that I also want to be sorted using the IP sort. And I will keep my target productions or accurate productions on top. So that, at this stage, what I've done is, in my Analysis Composer, is I've created a simple phones query, and I've also made sure that the data are reported for that query in a specific way. And now what I can do is go back to my stock analyses here, my built-in analyses, and say, okay, now what I want is my person phones correct. So I'm just adding it to my list of analyses, and here I can decide that for example, to focus on consonants, and from there proceed with my analysis. So at this stage, what we can do is just run the analysis. So you'll see how this works. You run the analysis, and again, using the open project, you can define or decide what sessions you apply the analysis to. And here, in the interest of time, I'll stick to only a few sessions, and hit next. And here, when I run my analysis, I can decide to stick to the whole analysis I composed, or just run a subset of my analyses. Because at this stage, the phones query, which is by definition a query, has been combined with a given report. So we can call that the phones analysis at that point. It's mostly definitional, but it's important to really understand the terminology in Fawn, whereby a query doesn't come with a preset report. So a query needs to be associated to a report, whereas an analysis in Fawn combines both query or query method and reporting in a custom way. And here what we have is a report that contains our aggregate of the behavior of D, and combined with data on productivity. So of course, there's no big research question behind that, but it gives us a sense of building relatively fancy analyses that can then be used for research, and key to that is that sometimes it takes a while to build these analyses. So that what we want to do is, once we have them down, is we want to save them so that we can use them multiple times, so that we can use the same criteria in our analyses across different work sessions, and trust that the results are always based on the same criteria, something that is very easy to do within Fawn using the the analysis composer, but not so easy to do when you have to compose your analyses each time, given like the level of detail that goes into some of these analyses. So let's pretend here we're very happy with our analysis. So we got some results that we could then save or export to other applications. But once we've obtained the analysis we're interested in, then we can just close our report here and save the analysis. And here are the options. We could save them, save this larger analysis within the user library, which means that as a user of Fawn, I would have access to that analysis across all of my Fawn projects. Or I could just save it within my project library, which means that this analysis would be specific or specifically tuned for the current project. So we'll do this for the time being. And so Fawn will open the dialog box, but setting the analysis in the right spot. And I could call this here my composed analysis. Save it. And as soon as you have it saved, then what you can do is go in the analysis menu and bring up that analysis by selecting it from the project library. Now imagine you're in collaboration with with colleagues, that are off-site, that are working elsewhere. Then what you can do is, well, two things. One of them is you can run your analysis by selecting the menu option. So here you could decide to run the analysis in multiple sessions, and here again get to pick what analysis you want to include in your report if you're only interested in a subset of those. But what I wanted to show is that if you click on Project Library instead, then that opens up the folder that contains that large analysis, so that what you can do is take your analysis and probably give it a better name than that. This is just for exposition purposes. And then take this file and send it to your colleagues or collaborators so that they can apply the same analysis to their own data on their side of things. And this really facilitates collaboration across different sites, in that then you can run different data sets. You can run consistent analyses across different data sets without having to put all of the data in the same pool. And finally, if you needed to further refine your analysis, you can go back to the analysis composer and you can bring up the analysis you've already saved and further configure it. So let's say you could add an analysis, or you could change some parameters for some of your existing analyses. And if you do that, and now you have what would be technically a new analysis, then you can either run it or save it again in your project library. And you can save it with the same name, and so you get to replace the original one, or you can save it with a different name in case you want to keep every version of your analysis.